Hello everyone, my name is Elle and welcome to part 2 of my Becca story. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you check that out first. In this video, I will be discussing Champagne Pop, the Jaclyn Hill effect, and what the heck happened. So in 2014, Jaclyn began a friendship with Becca that led to the highlighter of the decade, Champagne Pop, released in the summer of 2015. This was the event that made brands realize the true power influencers have. Jaclyn Hill's collaboration with Becca was surprising. Becca was not a household name, but makeup lovers would have been familiar with the brand that was in many Ulta and Sephora locations. Their highlighters were gathering momentum, mostly because of influencers like Jaclyn praising them. And Jaclyn Hill was collaborating with them, with a Sephora sold brand. This was the first influencer collaboration of this scale with a brand that had such a far reach. Previously, it was online brands, Sigma, ColourPop, even Morphe. MAC did collab with beauty bloggers in 2011, but that was sold online only and not in stores. If you dig far enough back, Lancome did a partnership with Michelle Phan, but it was handled much differently than the Becca collab, and it was much less successful. If anything, the partnership ultimately damaged Lancome's reputation, but that's a story for another time. Champagne Pop was going to be packaged with Jaclyn's face and name right on the box. Truly revolutionary at the time. As hype built for the release of this shimmery golden powder, 25,000 units sold in the first 20 minutes of its launch. At $38 US a pop, that's $950,000. And Champagne Pop was a Sephora exclusive. The highlighter was also supposed to be limited edition, but due to overwhelming demand, they brought it back. This is believable because no one anticipated how successful it would be. People who missed out were furiously typing about their FOMO and begging the product to be restocked. In October of 2015, a second product was announced, the Champagne Glow Holiday Palette.
Craziest rumor is that apparently Champagne Pop is coming back for the holidays. It's like people come up with the craziest stuff, you know? Oh my God, what's this? Well, that's none of my business.
This was a 3-pan palette consisting of Champagne Pop, Blushed Copper, and another limited edition shade called Pearl. Becca had Pearl as a liquid highlighter since the beginning, and as they had made pressed versions for their other liquid shades, Opal, Moonstone, Topaz, it made sense that Pearl would also become a shade. Spoiler alert, Pearl became permanent as well. Some people expressed frustration because Champagne Pop was supposed to be limited edition. The holiday palette was also supposed to have a limited amount available, but it also came back. Artificial scarcity in marketing is nothing new, but honestly, the original Champagne Pop did so well on its own, bringing it back at first made sense because the demand was so high, and no one could have predicted how quickly units would sell. Calling something limited edition and then making it permanent isn't a crime. But when the Champagne Pop individual highlighter was restocked in January 2016, the announcement it was permanent brought mixed emotions. Many people were upset they had rushed to buy the highlighter before, or bought backups, or were upset thinking it would lose some of the appeal of being a special collector's item. People love the illusion of exclusivity. But people who weren't able to get the shade, or those who loved it, were happy to know it was a permanent item. In fact, many people had been requesting the highlighter be made permanent. In May 2016, the Champagne Glow Face Palette was announced. This palette was larger and had 5 shades, 2 highlighters and 3 blushes, including a brand new highlighter called Prosecco Pop. The details of their partnership aren't public, but it's likely that the contract Becca and Jaclyn had was extended to release more products due to the success. This was also a partnership that involved Sephora, as the products were exclusive to the retailer. Champagne Pop was also trademarked by Becca in 2016. And this collection was the largest. The previously mentioned face palette, liquid and poured versions of Champagne Pop, which were also to be a permanent part of the Becca collection, and an eyeshadow palette. But the Champagne Pop collection hit a snag. To cut corners, Becca had eyeshadow palettes produced in China. Normally their eyeshadow will be produced in America, but a lab in China was selected allegedly at the last minute to try and produce more palettes in a shorter amount of time. and likely for less money. This caused poor quality issues. This issue exploded within the beauty community, but people who had received the collection in PR first gave mostly positive reviews. It took a small YouTuber who at the time went by Rita B to speak out against big names. Rita was the one who pointed out the manufacturing differences and how the formulas matched those of Essence and Catrice. Suddenly, more and more negative reviews came out. These eyeshadows truly were disappointing, and now people felt comfortable speaking out. Jaclyn addressed the issue on Snapchat at the time.
The eyeshadow palette is getting a ton of negative reviews saying that it's dry, it's patchy, it's not Becca's original beautiful formula that everyone loves so much, and I completely agree with you guys.
She made it clear that she was only responsible for one of the shades in the eyeshadow palette. Jaclyn insisted throughout her collab that she was in no way responsible for formula, ingredients, or manufacturing. A YouTube video Jaclyn had made about the collection was taken down, with no way to verify what had been said in that video versus the speculation in the Snapchats. Until now, I have the deleted video.
I want to say right here now, a lot of people will kind of doubt collaborations and think, oh, but you didn't do any work. They came up with everything and you just slapped your name on it. I just want to say right now, that is not how this went down. And anyone from Becca will tell you that that is not how this went down.
So in the video, the face palette and eyeshadow palette were specified as being limited edition, not the shades within them.
This is a limited edition face palette, and no, unlike Champagne Pop, this is never going to become permanent. It is limited and it's going to stay limited.
While Jaclyn was only responsible for creating one shade from scratch, Champagne Toast, she did have a say in the other shades and approval. For example,
Cognac right here, I requested, please make sure that there is a beautiful matte, warm, medium tone brown, because you know how much I need this color in my life.
So Jaclyn did have more to do with the eyeshadow palette than she had insisted on. And of course, nowhere in the video did she say she didn't want to do it, or that she was unhappy with the quality. She also discussed the eyeshadow palette as if she had experience using it, more than once. What happened with quality control? Either these palettes were never checked, or the hope was that they could get away with subpar formulations. Becca opted to pull the palette from the launch entirely, and customers who had purchased early during the pre-launch were advised that they could return the eyeshadow palette if they wanted. When the rest of the collection fully launched, the face palette sold 26,000 units in less than 2 hours. This was marketed with a Snapchat announcement and exclusive access via the Sephora app only. That's $1.3 million US, with sales topping 3.5 million by the end of the day. Robert DeBaker reflected on this back in 2018 to WWD. The thought of putting someone's name on the box, on the packaging as a collaboration now is a price of admission. It's table stakes if you want to be involved in the influencer moment. But think back 2 years ago, how many of us were really willing to put someone's name on the package? And it's true, brands that focus on a makeup artist clientele or from positive inclusions in magazines by beauty editors, they did not take social media seriously. Many fashion magazines were quick to belittle influencers and dismiss their ability to, well, influence. But the success of the third Jaclyn collab, the face palette, seemed to be proof that this was not a temporary phenomenon. The speed with which things have moved and the different dynamics that are involved present a real difficulty in figuring out where we go from here. The best and most powerful thing the influencer movement has done is truly put the power into the hands of the consumer. And in July 2016, there were split pans, half blush, half highlighter, 2 with Champagne Pop and 2 with Prosecco Pop. Again, people were annoyed. The so-called limited edition items were not so limited yet again. But they sold well. Not as well as the face palette, but still well. In September, Becca announced the Blushed with Light Blush Trio palette. This packaging is nearly identical to the Jaclyn Hill packaging. The little dots on the packaging were identified by Jaclyn as being her idea for the Champagne collection. So was the Blushed with Light palette supposed to have been another part of the collection? Either way, things seemed publicly peaceful between Jaclyn and Becca at this time. And because of this swift change in Becca's social standing, sales exploded, and it was estimated that they had brought in $80 million in 2016. This was double what they brought in for 2015. This didn't go unnoticed by industry giants. In October of 2016, Estee Lauder announced they were acquiring the brand for a reported $200 million. The Estee Lauder acquisition was reportedly finalized in November, and that same month, Becca restocked the 100% definitely limited edition, never coming back Champagne Collection face palette. Despite the complications from the eyeshadow palette, Becca delivered, quote, the highest year-over-year growth and quarter-over-quarter growth of its competitive set. This speaks to the strength of their influencer family and goodwill from consumers, both stemming in part from the brand's effective influencer strategy. Thanks in part to Becca's genuine, emotive response, the Champagne Glow collection continued to do well following its in-store launch, end quote. In January of 2017, Trend Mood leaked that Prosecco Pop would be coming back as a permanent highlighter, and in all 3 forms as well: pressed, poured, and liquid. Jaclyn commented on the post, "I'm literally in shock right now. I had absolutely no idea." And in response to a fan, "No, my name won't be on it. I didn't know this was happening. They did it without telling me." And in March 2017, Becca officially announced that Prosecco Pop would be permanent and available in all 3 formulas, with no mention of Jaclyn Hill. Jaclyn's fans turned quickly against Becca. Already some fans had expressed dissatisfaction with the brand. The initial turn began with the issues with the eyeshadow palette. Many did put the blame on Becca and felt like they had hurt Jaclyn's reputation. But this announcement caused the snake emojis on Instagram, and thousands of fans exclaimed their dedication to Jaclyn. "You seem to have forgotten to credit the person who made this successful. @Jaclyn Hill created this shade. Give credit where it is due." You mean @Jaclyn Hill's shade that she named and created? Where's the credit? Shady AF. "Everyone should boycott this." Jaclyn tweeted a while ago that she had no idea and Becca never told her about this. "They took her off and are super shady. I really liked you, Becca, but you wouldn't be anything special without @Jaclyn Hill. #Hillster for life. You should really be ashamed of yourselves for scamming so many people. This is terrible. For all the people who purchased the palette because you guys said it would be limited edition. Not to mention you guys basically used Jaclyn Hill for your benefit. This was her baby. You guys are truly money hungry. We'll never buy from your lying asses again. Looks like I'm not the only one who thinks this is a little shady/greedy. Jaclyn Hill should be on those colors. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered." I know I speak for a lot of Jaclyn's followers when I say this, but if she is not properly credited for this product, I will not be purchasing this or anything else from Becca Cosmetics. And many, many more similar comments. It's not surprising that Estee Lauder would have wrapped up Jaclyn's contract with Becca. Honestly, this is pure speculation, but like I said before, her contract was likely signed for 2015, then extended into 2016 with the success of the collaboration, and royalties would have had to have been negotiated. It's unlikely that Jaclyn's contract included any permanent royalties with the products. As she said, she was involved with the shade choices, nothing more. When Champagne Pop was made permanent, Jaclyn would likely have been offered a deal. Prosecco Pop was, at the time, limited to a face palette and split pan compacts. Jaclyn's contract likely didn't involve making it a permanent item. Jaclyn wouldn't have had the rights to Champagne Pop or Prosecco Pop anyway, let alone anything else that was owned by Becca. A few short months later, in June 2017, a 2-year anniversary Champagne Pop with a champagne print was released. Becca tagged Jaclyn on every single post referencing the anniversary edition of the highlighter. Was this planned before? Most likely not. This was probably a response to Prosecco Pop, and that was the last time Jaclyn shared Becca products. The point here is that Jaclyn's influence is extreme. This was seen in how many people she brought to Becca originally, and she is a polarizing figure. This means that people who love Jaclyn and believe what she says will support what she supports and endorses. They will also leave brands behind that Jaclyn does. Her fans felt she had been betrayed by Becca, and while she never confirmed or denied any speculation about what happened behind the scenes, her fans took her side. And her detractors always pay extra attention to the brands she has and does work with. Consider Morphe. Jaclyn effectively put Morphe on the map as well. Her endorsements led to the brand's enormous success. It also led to many people exploring the brand's history much deeper. But with Morphe, she's been gentler. If she was to leave Morphe for another brand, her followers would follow. And her collaborations with Morphe were taking place side by side with the Becca ones. The big Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette was announced mere days after her last Becca post about the 2-year anniversary highlighter. And she had been working on the Morphe allegedly for years, which would have overlapped with Becca. as well as her own brand, which was supposed to have launched in 2017. In August of 2018, Morphe sued Becca because of their collaboration packaging with Jaclyn Hill for the Vault palettes. Becca had previously sent a cease and desist to Morphe over their upcoming collab with Jaclyn. Morphe took it to court, and ultimately it was settled privately weeks later. Also in 2018, Becca was under fire for allegedly using a light-skinned model painted darker to show swatches. An inexcusable action that goes against the very core of the Becca brand and their origin. So how can anyone be surprised that Becca lost its sparkle? Even the Chrissy Teigen collection couldn't shine. Chrissy Teigen has a massive online following, but only a portion of her fan base would be into makeup, let alone luxury makeup with a fairly steep price tag. And the Becca palette was met with harsh criticism, mostly because shades look similar to some that were in the Champagne collection. And while this is absolutely not unusual for brands to use similar shades or even the same shades in new collections, this became a constant criticism for Becca. But this is something every brand does, and something brands have done forever. Here's one example. Think about an iconic eyeshadow palette of the past. You may have thought of the Urban Decay Naked palette. Well, that palette only had 5 new shades out of the 12 when it launched. The rest were all bestsellers. Many shades within the Naked palette were reused again and again in other Urban Decay palettes as well. Chrissy's palette initially sold well, but when they restocked it, it sat on the shelves for a while, and when they did a second collab, it got a fraction of the attention. Becca also had a Khloe Kardashian collab, which was one of the worst collaborations ever and sat on the shelves. Pieces of the collab were still available, deeply discounted years later. Despite the Kardashian status, they too are quite polarizing figures, and brands who collaborate with the famous family tend to experience a fair amount of backlash and boycotts. In 2019, Becca's holiday collection was Champagne Pop inspired. When Kathleen Lights reviewed the collection, she even included Shady in her thumbnail and spent a decent amount of time discussing how it felt weird for Becca to do a Champagne Pop inspired collection of products when that was something everyone associates with Jaclyn Hill.
I understand them keeping the highlight 1000%, but I feel like they should have changed the name. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm also a YouTuber and I'm trying to put myself in that position. But the fact that they did an entire Champagne Pop collection, am I the only one that finds that a little weird?
And many people in the comments section agreed, feeling that Becca truly screwed Jaclyn over. In my opinion, Becca should never have made Champagne Pop permanent. Yes, it was hugely successful, but it was a collaboration product. It should have stayed limited edition, and once it was gone, let people miss it. The 2017 2-year anniversary special edition compact would have gone over much better. But if they truly wanted to add it to their line, it should have been done without Jaclyn entirely. Neither Jaclyn nor Becca addressed the end of their collaboration in a formal way. Not that a press conference with official statements needed to be made, but a simple tweet from Jaclyn saying she was moving on to other opportunities, focusing on her own brand, would have been plenty, and for Becca to do the same. If they acknowledged the end of the collaboration, wished Jaclyn well, public perception would have been so much better. I also want to remind people that 2017 Jaclyn was at the top of her game. This was pre-Morphe Vault, pre-Lipstick Gate. She was one of the most beloved and influential YouTubers who didn't have a whole lot of drama there. Making Prosecco Pop permanent was definitely a nightmare and never ever should have been done. Champagne Pop was one thing. At the very least, the OG highlighter was made permanent while Jaclyn was still under contract. Prosecco Pop should have lived and died within that face palette and those blush compacts. I also believe that they would have been better suited collaborating with other influencers. If left burnt by the Jaclyn collab, I understand the resistance and why they chose not to, but Chrissy Teigen's fanbase was never going to bring that many new consumers to the brand. Imagine a Becca collab with a 2017 Desi Perkins, for example. And so while Becca still sent PR to influencers, many wouldn't talk about Becca because of the perception of the brand. They had earned a bad reputation. Micro-influencers did talk about Becca because they received PR, and it's largely because they received PR that they talked about them, but they just didn't have the same scale of influence as the large YouTubers that just were not talking about Becca anymore. And while there has been so much backlash about making items permanent, there's also been backlash for discontinuing products. So I want to touch on a couple of things. So the Beach Tint Shimmer Soufflés, they launched in 2014. We hadn't hit peak powder highlight by this time. They were discontinued in late 2017 when powder was queen. The original beach tints were discontinued sometime in 2018. Again, they wouldn't have been selling well with the current makeup trends, and while trends were slowly beginning to swing around, they were not swinging around in 2017. And cream gel products don't have long shelf lives. This is disappointing because the beach tints were an iconic part of the Becca lineup and really truly like a staple of the original lineup, but they just were not on trend for the time. The Poured Highlights, a cream to powder formula, part of the Skin Perfector line, discontinued in or around 2018. Despite some slow turning again to more cream-based products, the majority was still very much into the YouTuber Instagram makeup look. And finally, the Shimmering Skin Perfector Liquid. An OG product, as I discussed in part 1. These liquid highlighters had been with Becca since the beginning. They discontinued these sometime between late 2019 and early 2020 and replaced them with a liquid illuminator that was sparkly. Like a lot more sparkly. What a terrible decision, and honestly, I blame this on the restructuring of employees, which I will talk about more shortly. Around this time, most of the iconic look of Becca was totally lost. Although Becca hadn't updated its packaging much since its inception, it suited the brand. The packaging was classy without being too simple. The new revamped Becca looked like a poor attempt of a millennial trying to pass for Gen Z. It just doesn't feel authentic. With the discontinuation of fan favorites and the redesign of the brand's packaging and entire aesthetic, Becca felt like a shadow of its former self. And then the new releases. The Zero Pigment Foundation. The desperation reeked from that release, and while they succeeded in getting people to talk about them, it did not go over well. What's that saying? All publicity is good publicity? Not in this case. And then 2020. Already lackluster and having lost consumer confidence, partially due to Estee Lauder's ownership, partially due to Jaclyn Hill, Becca could not survive the impact of COVID. In February 2021, Estee Lauder announced that this was the end for Becca, and they would shut down in the fall. As I'm sure everyone knows by now, the beauty industry as a whole has been affected. In general, people have less disposable income for purchases, people are home more, and when out wearing masks, many stores are closed, limiting many consumers to online shopping, supply chains are affected, it's taking longer to receive orders, and there are many manufacturing hurdles, to name just a few issues. While Becca may be one of the notable first, they will likely be joined by other brands in the coming months and even years as the beauty industry needs to readjust to this new way of life. But the struggle with Becca is not something new. I combed through old financial reports and filings from Estee Lauder almost immediately after the announcement was made. And Becca began to struggle financially by 2018. To quote the 2019 report, as of June 30th, 2019, the fair value of Becca trademarks exceeded carrying values by 14%. The carrying values of the Becca trademarks were $98 million. If these reporting units are adversely affected by a softness in the retail environment for their products, or if other business disruptions arise that cause a change to their long-term financial projections, there could be a negative effect on the fair values of the related trademarks, and it is possible we could recognize impairment charges in the future. Essentially, Becca was not bringing in what they had planned or assumed based on the information that they had when they acquired Becca in 2016. This is not surprising. Becca has a history of struggling, as I discussed in part 1. Their success was more of a fluke and not something sustainable. Estee Lauder also shares a lot of upper management types between their subsidiaries. It makes sense. Those CEO, president salaries aren't cheap, but they constantly bring in people from in-house that don't appear to have the drive and passion for the product. And consumers are beginning to see through that more and more. It's why there's such a love for collabs with people like influencers who genuinely love makeup, why makeup artist brands are often so successful, and why people were drawn to Becca in the first place. Robert DeBaker left in 2018. He's now, funnily enough, the president of Luxury Brand Partners, who had owned Becca before they sold to Estee Lauder. The CEO from 2018 to 2020 was listed as Lisa Sequino, who had previously held other Estee Lauder positions such as the Senior VP General Manager of Estee Lauder and Air & Beauty, North America. From 2020 to present is Havard Jean-Alexandre, Global General Manager / CEO, who previously was the managing director Asia Pacific for Bobbi Brown. Carrie Cole left by the end of 2019, and what went down is a mystery, as she had been an integral force with the brand for several years. The brands that appear to be struggling the most at Estee Lauder are Becca, obviously, Smashbox, and Glam Glow, according to financial reports, and they all share the same senior vice president and global general manager, Glenn Evans, who before Estee Lauder worked for Coty and Avon. One thing missing from most of the Estee Lauder-owned brands is passion. They have everything else covered, but they need to bring in some creative forces to balance the rest. And I sure hope that with the COVID restructuring plans they have in place, we see that in the coming months and years, as other brands have shown signs of struggling like Clinique and Too Faced and MAC, though MAC's decrease in sales can largely be traced to stores being closed, as MAC is one of the few brands that has done exceedingly well with their in-store hands-on business model. I'm honestly a little surprised that Estee Lauder didn't sell Becca though. They've sold underperforming brands before, like Stila, but then they don't really have a team left for Becca, so perhaps that's playing a larger part than we know. I will definitely be keeping an eye out for more information, and if I dig anything else up, I'll certainly do a part 3. But that is everything for part 2. What do you think about Becca Cosmetics? Do you have any favorite products? What are you going to miss the most? For me, it's definitely going to be the under eye corrector. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on Becca as a brand and what you think led to their downfall. It's just a reminder, this is my opinion and my sort of general analysis and thoughts, my perspective as a consumer and someone who has been a fan of Becca for many years, just what I witnessed going down. So I'd love to hear some other opinions and thoughts as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I hope we get a chance to chat soon. Bye for now.